Happy Saturday. Hope all is well, and hope you guys are doing great. Not going to hold you. I know it's Saturday and everyone's out doing things. It's a nice day today. It's a little warm, and I'm just going to share some of my musings today. I wrote something earlier, uh, and I talked about the flesh when my consciousness or my state of being was sin based, or in other words, I guess when I came up in my spiritual life, when some aspects of my spiritual life, we heard of this thing called the flesh. And it's like every little thought I had, or every little human feeling I thought, especially if it was sexual, if you see a woman and you feel something, or your humanistic curiosities of sensuality or sexuality, not based on who I was attracted to or what gender I was attracted to, but the curiosity of carrying out the deed, feeling these feelings, or the quote unquote struggle of decision and character. And it was called the flesh or the flush, depending on who's talked about it. And so it was as though our humanity and the feelings of our humanity were constantly being used as the measuring stick between us and God. And so if you wanted to be accepted by God, there was this issue of this torment in your flesh that was used as the gauge or the evaluator of where you were in your salvation. If you're saved, you wouldn't do this. So you spend a lot of time struggling, fighting what we call the flesh, which is though if I didn't do it, I earned a point in my salvation this day. If I felt like fornicating or doing something, and maybe not just fornicating, but if I went off in my mind somewhere, if my mind wasn't saved at the time, I earned a point with God. And you struggle to not fulfill the lust or the yearnings of your human curiosity. And so if I didn't perform it, I earned a point, and I had all week. I had a victory. And there was a song, I've been saved all day, no evil have I done. And that's ingrained in your consciousness that if I didn't fulfill something in my humanity, I passed. And that's what I call the sin consciousness, where you're earning a pass with God based on what actions you didn't do, as though God is some sort of schizophrenia, suffering from he's a what is that? Schizophrenic. If he's suffering from paranoia that if I do something, I'm going to lose a point. And so after a while, you begin to look at God as a God that adds points. And so that's a fear of consciousness, a sin consciousness, where you begin to beat up the flesh. Hey, how you doing? And I know scriptures where Paul talked about keeping his flesh under subjection. But I'm going to say this. I think most of our issues come when we feel that those who wrote certain things that are in scripture, I think our tragedy comes and our struggle comes when we feel that their wisdom is the highest wisdom. And I don't think that we feel that we have evolved beyond some of the people who wrote things that may be used in the Bible. I really believe that some of our truths and our revelation and our covenant and our life, I think we have evolved past some people who have wrote some scripture. And so I don't believe that their experience is the standard of where we are. And I think that's an issue. I think that some of us have evolved past the mentalities of those whose writings may be used in the Holy Writ. I think our experiences and our time, it's not a matter that life has gotten easy and we're trying to sugarcoat the gospel. No, I just think that the times have shifted, and that our commitments to God and understanding have advanced past the struggle that is written in the scriptures. I think some of us have learned something, and I think we try not to outgrow the scripture. And it's not a matter of outgrowing the scripture, but I think we have a better look into what's going on. It's not a matter of you better than the Bible. Yeah, I think some of our seeing and perceptives have grown past. The Bible is not outdated, but I believe that some of us have opened the door that the scriptures have been alluded to, and some of us have walked through that door to see a greater thing than what's been presented with some people in the scripture. How many of you understand what I'm saying? And so I'm no longer at a place where I struggle in the flesh, because I don't allow my humanity to be my spokesperson to God. I have, and I believe some of you too have, yeah, he said we would do greater. And I don't believe we think so. I have a son consciousness now, where my humanity or its failings are no longer used as my evaluator of growth. I don't have to see my flesh to see how much I'm growing. And it's not a matter of becoming comfortable with sin either. No, I'm not comfortable with lawlessness, but I don't allow what's unfinished to rule my progress or my position in my mind. I'm no longer living, am I saved or am I feeling saved? I remember when I was coming up. How many of you guys understand what I'm saying? I remember when I was coming up that there was this thing of feeling saved. There's this commitment, this thing of feeling saved, and sometimes you don't feel saved. And the older saints had to encourage the younger saints to still hold on, because they said sometimes you're not going to feel saved. And so I remember having those struggles of feeling saved, or feeling sacred, or feeling like I wanted something. And then there was those days I didn't feel like being, like using the sacred life as a gauge to what's going on. There are some days you want to use the sacred movements of prayer and reading the Bible and stuff. And I'm saved because I feel like I want to go to church tonight. And then there were some days you didn't want to go. And so I couldn't let the feelings of not wanting to go to church or read the Bible dictate my salvation. So you look at a lot of works and look at a lot of things that you do. But when you're a son, when you begin to understand that you are a divine nature of God, you no longer begin to fear those feelings. You don't base growth on the feelings of being saved, because you're not really thinking on, yeah, question in the beginning, did he really save me? Yeah, like I gotta feel sacred to feel saved. It's like, no, I rest. I don't rest in sin, but I rest in knowing that my life with God isn't based on points. And I think religiously we trying to earn points, and I think that's why we lie on the test. We're still trying to earn points with God to see if we're accepted by God, because our acceptance with God has to be dealt with every day. And folks would push that. Okay, you got to make sure that God don't cast you away. And so I was always on the verge of being cast away. And so you have to lie to make God feel that you want to be in his presence. But it's not like that. It's not like that, because the more you rest as a son, the more you begin to chill on the points and earning points. How many of you guys understand what I'm talking about? So what is this flesh thing now? I'm not living after the flesh now, but after the spirit. When you live after the spirit, it means you're no longer allowing your humanity to be the point saver or the point gauger or the representative between you and God. And as long as you allow your behavior and your flesh to be the representative between you and the wisdom of God in your heart, you're going to be tormented. You're going to be tormented because you don't know if your life is turning against you. You're going to always be tormented. And all of a sudden, the pleasure of living a godly life and the pleasure of being God's son and God's children will will be lost because we're busy trying to capture points to win the game. And at the end, those of us who have all of the points, we win and we go to heaven. And you really live a tormented life. You really never see your full potential of life, or the beauty of your life, or the creativity of your life, because you're trying to defend holiness. You're trying to defend being holy and things like that. And the thing is, holy is not some act. Holy is the name of the nature of God, and holy is the name of your nature. Your nature is holy. Your nature is a set apart nature, a set apart from all limitations. You understand what I'm saying? And so what is the flesh? What is the flesh? What is the flesh? I remember when I was younger, I liked jazz music. My oldest brother had a David Sanborn tape, and I listened to the David Sanborn tape, and I really loved it. I could feel it. And one day I went to the old sound warehouse to get the tape. And when I got there, I found the tape, and I wanted to buy it. I say, this is it. But I started feeling guilty because I got the tape. And so I went and bought 2 Winans tapes and a commission tape to kind of balance it out. And so I wind up spending $45 and instead of spending $8 that day, I wind up spending more because I had a fear of the flesh. My consciousness was sin-based, getting points with God. And if I didn't do the act, God was happy. It was as though God was sitting on the throne, and if I didn't do a bad act, he got the glory. But that really brings down the power of the mindset of God and the power of God and the sovereignty of God, because it's as though we're looking at God feeling happy if an act isn't committed, instead of seeing that I'm comfortable being his offspring. It's like, but that was the battle going on in my mind. That was the battle, the struggle that was going on in me. And so instead of going into the music store and spending $8, I wound up spending $45 on tapes that I didn't want to listen to, but I had to kind of balance it out, because if I bought that jazz tape, God was going to be hurt. So I need to buy 3 Christian tapes over the 1 jazz tape to kind of even it out. And that's how we live sometime. And when you're immature in your consciousness, when you're immature in your spirit, you live on a point-based feeling with God. And if you live comfortable with God, those who quote unquote represent holiness can look at people who are confident in God, and it'll be like you're living too loose, so you're not living sanctified. When the scriptures say that when our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart, and he knows all things. There are some of us in this life, if we haven't really matured or evolved in being God's son, we still equate sonship with being a Christian or being the representative of holiness, and we're missing the fact that we're the actual offspring of God's intentions. We're God's children. We're not just acts of God filtered through church to be accepted back to God, but we're actual sons of God. But when your heart doesn't allow you to think that way, the scripture says God is greater than the heart, and he knows all things. And then the scripture says, but those of us who don't have this fear, it means we have confidence toward God. It means we have learned the lesson. We've learned, so our heart doesn't have a sin consciousness, because we have confidence toward what this is all about. Some of us don't know what all of this is about yet, so we're walking in baby steps trying to please God by saying all the right things, but feeling all the wrong things. So if I don't let God know how I feel, but I don't really do the act, and I've earned a point with God, and so I feel good today because I'm allowing my non-sinful activity to be my gauger of acceptance to God. But God isn't thrilled because you didn't commit an act. He's hurt because you don't know who you are to bring the rest of his love into your power, into your life. Because if I'm living living for God without knowing who God is as my Father. He's troubled because I'm not opening the door to allow the full power of that nature to consume me, because I'm afraid of him on one end, and I'm trying to please the people on one end.